Joining us on Loudwire Nights once again is September Mourning. Thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us.
Thank you for having us.
Of course, of course. So for those who are unfamiliar, September Mourning is a transmedia project that includes live shows, music, and comic books. And most recently, the graphic novel September Mourning, The Complete Collection, Volume 1 was released. And last time we talked, you guys were working on this. I know you're super stoked about it. So tell us about it.
Woo! yeah, totally stoked about it. It's a culmination of all 4 issues of the standalone issues of September Mourning, the comic books, and we compiled them into a graphic novel and released it a couple weeks ago through Image and Top Cow. And it's pretty amazing. If you don't know the story behind September Mourning, she's this human reaper hybrid that goes against Fate, who's personified in the comic books, and Fate's reapers, and tries to save humanity. So it becomes this giant epic battle between the living and the dead, and it's kind of really cool.
So that's like one-stop shopping, right? You could get the entire story right there. September Mourning, the Complete Collection, Volume 1.
Yes. You can get it. Also, you can get it in Barnes & Noble. You can get it at Target.com. You can get it on the Top Cow website or the Image Comics website. It's on the Sumerian merch store as well. Sumerians are record label, so they have it. Or you can just come to a show. We're going to be with Rob Zombie soon, so you can come down and see us with him and pick up a book.
I definitely want to ask about that. Do you ever sneak into a Barnes & Noble? I was told that some authors sneak in there and then they put their book in a more prominent position so more people can see it. Have you ever done that?
Yeah, I did that once. I was like, this should be over here. But yeah,
that's awesome.
Just because, or I'll do it and I'll snap a picture of it and I'll put it on my Instagram story. Look what I found.
I love it, and it was right here at the very tippity top and right up front.
It's crazy. It's like having the graphic novel out and seeing it in stores and stuff. It's pretty cool because I never thought I'd have a book out that I wrote and conceptualized in a big bookstore like that. So it's pretty much like a bucket list thing for me. So I'm pretty proud of it.
You should be. Where did this love for graphic novels / comic books begin with you? And do you remember the first one you ever read?
So the first one I ever read was The Killing Joke. It was a Batman graphic novel. And it was in my grandparents' basement, and I think I was 13, and I was going through my dad's old stuff, and it was in there, and I just picked it up, and I was like, this is cool. And I just fell in love with Batman. Was the first character I fell in love with, and I think that actually to this day probably still my favorite character and character arc and storyline always goes back to Batman, just because he's I don't know, there's something about his brooding masculinity that just gets me every time. But there's the storyline of The Killing Joke was pretty epic, and it's one of my all-time favorite reads. So.
Who do you think played the best Batman on screen?
Oh, I'm going to have to go with Christian Bale because he's hot. And, and he was just amazing to me. Those 3 Nolan movies are absolutely my favorite comic book graphic novel adaptations of Batman ever in the universe. So I really stand behind them. I love everything that he did with the characters and just the storylines and that epic 3 storyline arc that he did over the 3 movies. I just loved it.
Okay. Now, you said you never really would have thought that you would have a book out in a Barnes & Noble. Do you think the project will evolve over time? Maybe a movie or some sort of animated series seems to be the natural progression, right?
Yeah, we would love that. I mean, the book is selling well, and we just hope that people pick it up more often and tell their friends about it and just spread the word, because that's just how it works, I remember I was talking to Mark Silvestri, who's the co-creator on the book, and he's amazing. He's an incredible talent. And he and I were talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and he was telling me a story. He's like, yeah, I used to see those guys, and they used to dress up, and the guys that created the actual, the whole thing. They used to dress up and they used to come to the Comic-Cons like dressed as the Turtles, and people were like, "Who are these guys?" Like, because nobody had ever heard of them. And they did this for years and years, and nothing ever happened. And then all of a sudden, boom, like something happened. So if you believe in your IP and you believe in your project enough, and people start really kind of culminating around it, it's amazing what you can make happen. So we're hoping that something great that happens like that as well.
But you also need a catchy, a catchphrase. You need a cowabunga. What is September morning? What is September morning's cowabunga? The meal of choice, pizza. We need one of those as well.
Oh, your soul is mine.
There you go. I actually wanted to ask you, since your fan base are known as the Children of Fate and you collect their souls at the shows, have you ever met like a highly enthusiastic fan that just took it way too literal?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a couple of fans that come up to the merch table and be like, "Oh my God," they're a little bit like super into it. I mean, maybe not to the point where it's absolutely crazy like that, because I think everybody gets, that we're not really Reapers. I mean, we did release a song called Stand By Me, which was interesting because the Benny King died the day that we released it. So people were like, "Ooh," because we're Reapers. But and I think that was really sad, but it was kind of weird. And but I don't think that everybody is like, "Oh, these guys are really Reapers. They're going to come get me." But it's nice to, kind of like transform the world and wrap people around it for at least, like an hour or something like that, and keep them in our world. And just Imagination Land is fun. People like being in it.
Totally. I was reading about how you think that there's been a shift in the rules of making active rock music. What do you see changing, and how has that influenced the sound of the next September Morning record?
I think that it's interesting because genres of music, to me anyway, this is my opinion, genres of music, the only way that they grow is if they kind of transform themselves over time and they bring in other elements of other kind of like musical formulations into their fold a little bit. And I feel that, we saw that in active rock a while back, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think, with like Linkin Park brought in, pop, very heavily in their formulaic writing and the way that they approached active rock. And, you have people like POD and things like that brought in hip hop and things like that and stuff like that. And then you kind of had this weird shutdown that happened in the late 2000s, I think, that active rock really didn't expand that much. It just we like started resuscitating everything and regurgitating everything that had happened before. But now there's this big spin on hip hop and this huge movement in that urban culture of different sounds and different sort of classifications of urban music. And I think that more or less that spillage of the modern hip hop and the modern urban music, that is kind of like what is going to define what moves into rock. And I think that you're starting to see that a little bit, like with especially the new Bring Me the Horizon album, Ammo, that came out. There was a lot of that was that spillage that people kind of heard, and maybe they didn't recognize it because they don't listen to that much urban music, but I'm a big fan of it. And so I heard that and I was like, oh, cool. Or they brought in EDM, which is very popular now and which is making a big movement too. And I think that's really cool. And we've started to do that with ours, Empire and Glass Animals. They have elements of both kind of sonic landscapes, and we tend to bring that into our music, and we hope to do that even more moving forward, because it's progression. It's progression of the genre, and it's progression of something that's original. And I think that's really important to keep rock alive, is to make that progression.
I feel like some people see it as progression, but Ammo got so much hate, if I could say that, among the rock and metal community. Everybody's like, oh, they went pop. Like, they got a lot of slack for it.
I believe that they did, but I think that a lot of times new and different gets a lot of slack before it catches on. You like a lot of times something that's really good gets a lot of hate, and then all of a sudden everybody's listening to it, and everybody's doing it, and everybody's mimicking it, and everybody's trying to be it. And I mean, I know with a lot of producers that I write with and things like that, they're like, yeah, every band comes in here with a female singer and is like, I want to do what Halsey does, but like with rock, So like there is this curvature towards it. People, I mean, it's kind of like, I hate to say this, but it's kind of like the Nickelback factor. Everybody hates on Nickelback, but still they sell out arenas. So I don't know how many people are hating out there, but like people love Nickelback, it's like, even if they don't want to say it. And it's a weird sort of like curve like that. And I think that you're going to see a little bit more acceptance of bringing different genres into rock. I hope so, because I think we should all get along, and we should all kind of like meld together a little bit, because I think that makes music interesting, and it makes sonics interesting, and I love all that. We did it back in November of last year with Empire. We brought in a lot of pop and a lot of urban elements into the sound, and I think that it made a nice splash, and people really enjoyed it. So we love moving in that direction.
Awesome. We talked a bit about, for a second there, that you have some dates coming up with Rob Zombie, then a stop in Michigan and Wisconsin in June. What are you most excited about in terms of touring with Rob Zombie? I know you've toured with Manson, who's his constant touring mate, but have you gone out with Zombie before?
No, we've never been out with him. He's kind of been on my bucket list of people to tour with. I love Rob. He's amazing. He's an incredible artist. He brings all this cool stuff from the old movies into like, everything that he does. And his music is just so standalone Rob Zombie. Like if you play him on the radio, like the minute he hits the airwaves, like everybody knows it's Rob. And I think that definitive sound is an amazing thing to have as an artist, and it's so incredible to tour with somebody that's really defined a genre, and I think that he has done that to the max.
Is there crossover between the horror movie fan and the graphic novel fan?
Oh, definitely. I'm definitely seeing a little bit of that, I think it'll happen more and more because of the way that, we are a dark sort of graphic novel and a dark sort of band. So I can't wait to see like more and more of that crossover happen.
There's also 2 mystery shows scheduled, and I know by asking you I am going to reveal screw with the mystery aspect of it, but what are those 2 shows? Why are they so mysterious?
Well, we're not supposed to say anything yet, so I can't reveal the mystery shows. But if you stay in tune with us on like our Instagram and our Facebook and Bands in Town and stuff like that, you will definitely hear about them very, very soon. I promise you. It's
going to be you coming out on stage in like sneakers and flip-flops September morning, bitches.
And a Hawaiian shirt and no pants. I'm just kidding.
They would love that. They would love that. How long does it take you to get into character? 2 hours, 3 hours?
3 hours of makeup and wigs.
Oh my God.
It's like crazy amount of time, but it's kind of like, I don't know, I love it. It just kind of gets me into another place before I go on stage, and I really like that place, and it's so different than my everyday who I am that I love like kind of transforming myself. So it's pretty cool.
All right. It seems like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. But when the fans really, acknowledge it and like love it and like really get into the storyline and get into the character and are there like with you, like it's an amazing feeling. We played the Thompson House in Cincinnati, and we headlined that show a little while ago, and it was an amazing feeling with the crowd right there with us, and it was pretty full, and it was just like so much energy, and it was all for that story and for that world. And so it makes the 3 hours worth it when you feel that energy and you feel that love.
So what can you tell us about the upcoming album in conclusion here?
Well, we are definitely, like I said, we're bringing in elements of urban music and pop like we have been for a while now. And we're just kind of like exploring down the road more of that. We do have some heavier songs, and we do have some more diverse, like more metal-y, sort of like more rock songs as well. Like we definitely keep, our roots in all of this music, but we are trying to push the envelope. We are trying to explore, and we are trying to, get our own signature sound. Like we were discussing with Rob, like we want to have our own signature sound, and we want to put that out there.
All right. Excellent. Is there a timeline for that album or not there yet?
We are thinking probably early next year for the album.
All right.
And we like to call our sound nerdcore because it's kind of like all the comic books, all the graphic novels, and all the music that kind of like involves all of that together. So
nerdcore?
Yeah.
All right, I've heard it all. I have heard it all. That's a new one. That's interesting.
It's nerdcore.
I love it.
Nerdcore music.
I love it. All right. Many thanks. September Mourning, the complete collection, Volume 1, Available 1. Keep our ears peeled for that upcoming album early next year. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
No, appreciate you.